Good evening. Good evening. I hope everybody can hear me and see me properly. My name is Indira Chandrasekhar, and I'm the curator of literature at the Kala Ghoda Arts Festival. We're very excited and thrilled that today we have with us Devdutt Pattanaik on the very first day of the Kala Ghoda Arts Festival at the Literature Platform. Devdutt needs no introduction. He is responsible for opening the minds of a huge range of people to thinking about the epics and mythology through his lectures, his columns, his writing, his online appearances, his television appearances. We at Out of Print, which is the magazine that I run, were proud to feature his story Iravan, which opens quite early in the story with this mind-opening line said by Arjuna, asked to Arjuna, "Do you know of any man who would have experienced a woman's emotions?" And Arjuna says, "Krishna, perhaps." Today, to shake us once again, to shake our minds up, to open us up once again, Devdutt is here at the Kala Ghoda Arts Festival, referencing our Kala Ghoda, to speak about the Aryan horse. If Aryans were domesticated only in 2000 BCE and entered India by 1500 BCE, it means that the events in the Ramayana and Mahabharata that refer to horse-drawn chariots could only have taken place about less than 3,500 years ago and not 7,000 or 5,000 as claimed by many. Devdutt, for those of you who may not know, who may be new to this, writes on the relevance of mythology in modern times. He was trained in medicine. He worked for 15 years in the healthcare and pharma industries before he plunged full-time into his passion, thankfully for us. Author of 50 books, and 1,000 columns, several with bestsellers. He is known for his TED Talks, his TV shows, especially Devlok, and his innovative views on culture, leadership, and an Indian approach to management. We're grateful to LIC for sponsoring this event at the Literature Platform at the Kala Ghoda Arts Festival. Ladies and gentlemen, Devdutt Pattanaik.
Namaste. Namaste, everyone. So today, the topic is an interesting one. It's on the Aryan horse. It's a topic, really I got inspired by the Kala Ghoda idea, the black horse. And, as a child, when I used to go to Juhu Beach, I was used to seeing camels and horses there, not anymore for various reasons. But, really as a city person, that's where you're exposed to horses and camels. And we don't realize these animals tell us so much about our history. Um, I was recently reading about camels. I was always wondering that camel is a desert animal. Ancient Egypt is a desert country. Surely ancient Egyptians were familiar with camels. Yet, when you look at the artwork of ancient Egypt, all the artwork, those massive monuments, those pyramids, the Tutankhamun's tomb, all of it, none of them show camels. There is no camel in a single ancient Egyptian art. And then you realize that camels were introduced into ancient Egypt, in fact, even to as Iraq, the regions what we know as Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, Israel, all these areas only after 1000 BCE, when the Egyptian civilization was in the decline and was gradually being taken over by foreign powers, first the Assyrians, then the Greeks. And therefore, the ancient Egyptians, the ones who built the temples, the one who built the Tutankhamun's tomb, Ramesses the Great, none of them had seen a camel. Now, this becomes interesting because when you read the Bible says that Abraham, the patriarch Abraham, had camels. And some people argue Abraham lived around 2000 BCE, that is 4,000 years ago, or maybe 3,500 years ago. There's a lot of, nobody knows really. But if that is so, then where did he get the camels? Because the camels weren't around at that time. The camels were restricted to the Arabian Peninsula. And these are questions that are exciting to me. Then I learned that in India, we didn't have camels until 1000 AD. So if you look at the older monuments in Rajasthan and Gujarat, there are no camels. You don't find camels in, for example, Rani Novao, which is in Gujarat. You don't find camel images in the Maru Gujarat architecture. But then you have these poetries like Dhoda and Maru, which shows the images of hero and heroines riding on camels, Rajput heroes on camels. You have Pabuji in Offered, which talks about how Pabuji travels to Lanka, of all places, to get camels. And these stories, you realize, is only 13th century, 14th century, that is 700 years old, 800 years old. And you realize history plays a lot of importance in these things. It helps you locate things. And as a storyteller, as someone who enjoys mythology, I like to locate mythology in history. Many people keep calling me historian. I don't know why. That is Ramchandra Guha. That is Upinder Singh. That's definitely not Devdutt Pattanaik. Devdutt Pattanaik writes on mythology, but mythology doesn't exist in a vacuum. Stories, symbols, and rituals exist in geography and history, and therefore must be understood in the context of geography and history. Very, very important to study geography and history, right? So where are these stories coming from? For example, when you read the Vedas, the Rig Veda especially, you realize the location is most probably Kuru Panchala, which is Punjab Haryana area. It only talks, when you talk of the Vedic world, it really talks about Punjab, it talks about Haryana, and it gradually moves towards the Gangetic Plain and moves towards Bihar. It does not talk of Rajasthan, it does not talk so much about Gujarat. So it's a movement is slightly different from the Indus Valley region, which is stretching from the Punjab, Haryana area down Rajasthan to Gujarat, right up to Maharashtra. So I'm very interested in these things because then they bring life to mythological stories. They help me understand what's going on in mythology. And one of the questions I've always been asked, everybody asks me, is first, did Ramayana and Mahabharata actually happen? And when did it happen? These two questions I've heard every person asks me. And I keep telling people that, it is whether it happened or didn't happen doesn't matter. The story plays a key role in shaping your thought process. And that is more interesting. The interesting thing is, what does the story do to you as a person? It is not important whether it happened, but I think we want to know it for various political reasons, various social reasons. We want to make them historical events for some. I simply don't understand why, but people want to make Ramayana and Mahabharata historical reasons. And people ask me, Devdutt, उसको तो इतिहास बोलते हैं. How do you explain to someone that the Sanskrit word itihas, written in Brahmana literature, is very different from the word history, a word which has meaning only 150 years ago? Before 150 years ago, the word history meant stories. Only 150 years ago, it became the subject that is taught in schools and colleges today, evidence-based understanding of the past. So this evidence-based understanding of the past is only 150 years ago. So in the Brahmana literature, when they are using the word itihasa, they don't mean the same thing as what is used by Europeans in the 19th century. You can't use these words across time and space randomly. You have to be very careful. What itihasa means in text is things that the storyteller has personally experienced. Ramayana is called itihas because Valmiki is part of the Ramayana. Mahabharata is called itihas because Vyasa, its composer, is part of the Mahabharata. He is reporting events that he saw. That is called itihas. If he is sharing information that he has heard but not experienced, then it is called Puran. So itihas is what I experience and share, and Puran is what I've heard. So Devi Devataon ki kahani jo hoti hai, when they're talking about Indra and Varuna and the gods and Shiva, then they will use words like Puran because I've heard, I have not witnessed, I was not present there. But Ramayana, I was present. Mahabharat, I was present. So itihas is a different meaning. It doesn't mean history. It means I was present there. So these are, but these itna sophisticated ideas, the large number of people who love social media and all that, उनको नहीं समझ पाएंगे. So I don't even bother to explain because it's not meant for everyone. Those who want to understand will study, and those who can't understand will shout and scream and have opinions. So that's behind the point. So Aryan Horse becomes important then. Because one of the questions that is often asked is, okay, let's just assume uh, Ramayana is historical event. Definitely, because everybody says it has happened. Politicians know it better than any historian in the world. All politicians know total detailed history of Ramayana. So, okay, we agree with them. Who cares for evidence? So, chalo, let's man lo. And we flow with that. But if you have a thinking mind and you don't believe that all politicians are like Raja Harishchandra 100% true, and you have critical thinking and you love skepticism, you love doubt, you enjoy thinking, then you would like to know a little bit more and you will ask questions like, for example, when you read the Ramayana, there is a lot of reference to horse drawn chariots, right? So when is there in Ramayana, if you think about it, when Ram is leaving Ayodhya and the people of Ayodhya are following Ram and crying because he is going out of the city, Ram is traveling on a chariot. There's a chariot on which he's seated with Sita and Lakshman, and they are being taken out of the city. There's a lot of crying happening at that time. This visualization is, सो राम एक रथ के ऊपर बैठे हुए हैं लक्ष्मण और सीता के साथ, and Sumantra is taking them out of the city and the whole city is following them. A similar image takes place in the Bhagavata literature. When Krishna and Balarama are leaving Vrindavan and going to Mathura, they are going on a chariot which is pulled by Akrura. He's on a chariot. और वो रथ के ऊपर सवार होके जा रहे हैं and everybody is crying. The gopis are crying, Radha is crying, Yashoda is crying, and you see this mirroring the same story which is there in Ramayana. These men are going, are they leaving the city Ayodhya? These two brothers are going, and the same thing is there in Bhagavata. Two brothers are going on a chariot and they're crying. One brother is light skinned, one is dark skinned, and they're going out of the city and they're crying, and everybody's crying. So you see the story in Bhagavata, you see the story in Ramayana. Chariots appear again in the Mahabharata during the war. They're called Maharathi. So they're great warriors on chariots. Bhagavad Gita is narrated on a chariot. They say when Ram is fighting Ravana, Indra sends his celestial chariot with his charioteer Matali to sit and fight the war. When you talk about Jagannath Ratha Yatra, there is this great chariot built in Puri, Odisha, and the chariot is traveling. They say this is the return journey of Krishna back to Vrindavan. He's coming back to Vrindavan, which is why it is a celebration. So, chariots drawn by horses are an important part of Itihasa. But chariots drawn by horses, according to historians, existed only for a duration between 1700 BCE and 700 BCE. Just this period, 1700 BCE to 700 BCE. So Alexander the Great, when he went to war, did not use a chariot because he was in 300 BCE. Ashoka did not use the chariots, then became ceremonial chariots. The way Victorias are used, or one of those, when the Princess Diana was getting married, there was this coach pulled by horses, coaches, but it was used not for warfare. This whole idea of Mahabharata, where there are these four horses pulling a chariot and being used for battle, took place only in 1,000-year period between 1700 BCE and 700. This is around the world, not just India. In ancient Egypt, so if you go to ancient Egypt, you have images of Ramesses the Great on these chariots. Then if you come to Mesopotamia, you will have the local kings hunting lions. Ashurbanipal of Assyria hunting lions using a chariot. When you go to China, you suddenly see the chariot around 1500, 1300 BCE. BCE is BC, before Christ, the old form. It's now before Common Era. And CE is Common Era, AD. But we are talking about BCE. So this is an interesting idea. And I was interested in it because around the world, horses, to put it simply, 1500 BC, that is 3,500 saal pehle, 3,500 years ago, the horse-drawn chariot is a very big military innovation. It's a big thing. It has entered the military spaces. So when you read the stories of Achilles in the Trojan War, he's riding a chariot pulled by horses. It can only be in this period. It can't be before. After that, there'll be memories because वो poetic memory हो गया है. But before it can't be, because if the horse is not there, it is like if you watch Friends, if you watch the serial Friends, you will notice no one in Friends uses the cell phone because the cell phone technology did not exist when the film serial Friends was there. Cell phone technology comes after the Friends. We may enjoy the jokes, but remember when you're watching Friends, there is no cell phone technology. Likewise, horse-drawn chariots existed only after 1500 BC. 17 to be technically right, but 1500 BC is a good number to remember, for me at least. So 1500 saal pehle. So the question is, Ramayana and Mahabharata, if they were events which actually happened before that or after that? And that's the question you have to ask yourself. I will not answer these questions. But for me, the Aryan horse enters India around this time. We know that from lots of information that scholars have been doing, and this has now been confirmed by genetic evidence. So we have genetic evidence which shows that somewhere between 4,000 years ago and 3,000 years ago, steppe pastoralists from southern Russia migrated to India, and this is associated with a cultural shift. A major cultural shift happens. We know that mostly men came, not they didn't come with families. They were mostly men who traveled, and they came. The small groups of people traveled over 1,000 years, small groups, but they kept migrating. Why did they keep migrating? What caused this migration? Probably climate change. We know that 4,000 years ago, that is in 2000 BC, there was a major climate change that happened. This accounts for the collapse of Egyptian civilization, which were building pyramids, which is called the Old Kingdom. We know this is somehow related to the Indus Valley civilization disappearing. It is related to the Akkadian civilization in Sumeria collapsing. So 4,000 years ago, something happened around the world, monsoon patterns changed, and it forced kingdoms collapsed, and it also resulted in a group of people migrating from southern Russia towards in different directions. Some moved to the west, some moved to the east, some moved towards the south. And the ones who moved towards the south brought the horse with them to India. Right? And this is now shown by a lot of archaeological evidence. So let me show you an example of a map. Look at this map. It's a very simplistic map. This is India over here. This diamond shaped is India. Very simple way of understanding India is create a diamond. And this little box over here is called the Aral Sea, A-R-A-L, Aral Sea. And this big box over here is the Caspian Sea. And then the box after that, this is the Black Sea. So between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, there is something called the Caucasian Mountains. Caucasian Mountains. So the word Caucasus comes from here. And if you travel here to the north part, there is this Aral Mountains and the Aral River, A-R-A-L River. Ural Mountains and the Ural River. Sorry, I keep making these mistakes. But this area is where the first oldest horses are found in this region. Horse-drawn chariots, sorry, not horses, but horse-drawn chariots, the oldest in the world. When are they dated? 2000 BCE, 4,000 years ago. So 4,000 साल पहले बार रथ मिलते हैं हमें north of the Caspian Sea, the northern part of the Caspian Sea. 4,000. By this time, the Harappan civilization is coming to an end. It is almost dying. And 500 years later, you see it migrating gradually from here. Then they go to what is called the Oxus civilization. The Oxus civilization is somewhere in Afghanistan, Kazakhstan area. And then gradually the people start moving and they come to Sindh area. They don't come from the Punjab area because it's very mountainous. They come via the Sindh area and then they enter India gradually. And there's archaeological evidence. So that is the Aryan horse movement. Slowly it is coming. And that was exciting to me. I didn't know the details of it. I knew mota moti somewhere it happened. But now we have archaeological evidence of horse, how the horse moved. The Aryans were, when you read the Rig Veda, it is very clear they loved horses. They really loved the horses. Horses are so important. They are talking about horse-drawn chariots, and they are also talking about cavalry, riding horses. So horse riders, घुड़सवार or rath savar. Mostly rath, less घुड़सवार. घुड़सवार or घुड़सवारी comes much later. Let me explain. Just look at it from a mythological point of view. You have the Dashavatar. When you come to the Ram avatar, you have the Rath for the first time. Parshuram is not associated with horses. But Parshuram's father, Jamadagni, marries. How does he get a wife? He goes to the king, and the king says, "Can you fetch me 1,000 horses, white in color, with a black ear?" And he gets those horses, and because he fetches those horses, he marries Renuka. So the marriage of Parshuram's father is linked to horses, the coming of horses. So interesting. The arrival of horses. Ki leke aa, I will let you marry my daughter. Then I'll know you're worthy of marrying my daughter. It's an interesting story. The horses are important to come. That's one. Then you come to Ram avatar. You see horses being used as chariots. Ram leaves Ayodhya on a chariot. You see the story of Ravana associated with chariots, but there is also reference to donkeys or asses pulling Ravan's chariot. There's a lot of references to Ravan's chariot was pulled by donkeys or asses. Now, this before the chariot was invented, we know the chariot like wagons were invented. They were used first pulled by bullocks, and they were pulled by mules, and they were pulled by asses, not mules, sorry, asses and donkeys, and Ravana is associated with that. And then in the Mahabharata, you also have the chariots. You have chariots associated with Krishna. You have chariots associated with Karna. You realize the concept of Suttaputra, Sarathi, Rathi. But when you go further down from Krishna, you come to Balarama, you come to Buddha. Buddha, you have the chariot. He's traveling on a chariot when he sees the dead body, he sees the old people, he sees in the city. And late, but when he leaves the house, he doesn't go on a chariot. When he's leaving Yashodhara, he goes horse riding. And then you have Kalki avatar again on a horse riding. So horse riding comes after chariots. All the images. So Indra rides the chariot, but Indra's son Jayanta is a horse rider, cavalry guy. Surya Bhagavan has a chariot, but Surya's son Revanta rides a horse. So chariot is giving away to the horse rider. And you see it's showing in stories also, it is coming later. So Revanta, Jayanta, Kalki, they are all riding horses, not chariots. While Indra, Surya, Rama, Krishna are riding chariots. And these are things that the Aryan horse makes you aware of. That these stories emerged after 1500 BCE, and gradually they are moving. So when you read cave paintings also, you find at this time beautiful cave paintings where chariots are there, and gradually chariots disappear and you have horse riders. Good savar. And the horses are always coming to India, because India, if you ask a horse trainer, they'll say India's climate, somehow horses never liked Indian climate. We had to keep importing horses. A lot of horses had to be imported in India. So Sangam poetry talks about Arab horses coming in boats, in these beautiful boats from Arabia. These horses would come to the Sangam. Tamil kings had horses. They loved horses. The horses wouldn't breed in India. You had to keep getting new stocks regularly if you wanted a cavalry. The only place in India where horses can be bred is in Rajasthan. It's called the Marwadi horse. The Marwadi horse is a very peculiar horse. Only horse breed in India. I mean, there is something in Manipur side also, but now we are finding that. But really, the Marwadi horse has a peculiar ears which are shaped like the moon. Their ears are shaped like the moon, they say. So, I mean, those are interesting ideas. But horse plays such an important role. You have Ashwamedha Yajna, an entire ritual where the horse was sent by the king, and the king would send wherever the horse would go, that land was conquered by the king. Ram does the Ashwamedha Yajna, Yudhishthira does the Yashwamedha Yajna. So, horse and horse sacrifice is part, and these are all Aryan rituals. We have found examples of horse sacrifice as far as Kazakhstan. In Kazakhstan, too, we have found images of horse heads being cut and replaced and human, and something to do with human bodies. The head of the horse is kept next to the human body. And we realize there are stories in the Vedas and the early Brahmana literature which talks about rishis whose head is cut off and replaced by a horse's head. Rishis called Dadichi. The horse head is replaced and it is called Kudremukh, horse headed gods or horse headed sages. Let me show you an image of one such deity. So, this is my book Hindu Trinity, which is part from Westland, which contains the various seven secrets of Shiva, seven secrets of Vishnu, seven secrets of Devi. We have combined it, and what I've done is I have selected images. You can see lots of images related to horses to show you. Look at this image. This is from South India. This is from South India. It is called Hayagriva. Hayagriva is the horse-headed form of Vishnu, which is associated with knowledge. So in South India, you will find amongst Orthodox Brahmins the worship of the horse-headed Vishnu. It is said the Vedas came from the horse-headed Vishnu. And this idea is found mostly in South India. It is also found in Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, not in North India. But it's obviously connected to the story of Dadichi. It is related to the story, also the story of Yagyavalkya. It is said that Yagyavalkya in the Upanishads had a fight with his guru Vaishampayan and rejected his guru and sought a new teacher, and the new teacher was the sun god himself. And the sun god, very interestingly, takes the form of a horse-headed being, घोड़े का सर लेके, gives him Vedic knowledge. So somewhere along the line, horse head was associated with Vedic knowledge. It's called Kudre Mukha, horse head, Ashwamukha, Hayagriva. The Ashwin twins are visualized many a times as horse-headed beings. So while the Greeks had centaurs, where the lower half is a horse and the upper half is human, in India, the Aryans and the Vedic people preferred the idea of a human body with a horse head. Even Tumburu, the great musician, is visualized as a horse-headed man. So this concept is very powerful. The Kinnaras are considered to be horse-headed. Ashwini Kumar is horse-headed. Dadichi is horse-headed. Hayagriva is horse-headed. Then you have in the Upanishads the chariot, the horse chariot being used as a metaphor for the body. The body, they say the soul is the rider, the senses are the horses, and the chariot is the body. So Upanishads uses the chariot metaphor. Clearly, after the Aryan horse enters India and becomes part of Indian culture around 800 BCE, the Upanishads are being composed somewhere in the Gangetic plains in the Bihar area, this region. The metaphor of the chariot has become very important. That is the time you start the images, the earliest images of the Surya on a chariot is found in Buddhist literature. It is not found in Hindu art form. If you go to Bagga Caves is about 200 kilometers from Bombay on the Bombay-Pune highway. If you go there, you will find the earliest image of Surya riding a horse on a chariot and fighting the cloud demons. Next to it, you will find an image of Indra, but he's not riding a horse. In the Vedic tradition, Indra rides a chariot. He does not ride an elephant. The elephant concept is coming much later, and Indra riding an elephant. First image found in Bagga Buddhist caves, very close to Bombay. Take a holiday there, you'll find it. And the elephant came from India. India was famous for elephants. In fact, the king of India was called Gajapati. And the traders who came by sea were called Naukapati. And those who came by land and sold horses were called Ashwapati. The Turks were called Ashwapati because they had the masters of horses. The Persians were called Ashwapati, masters of horses. And Ashwapati is a very common name in Ramayana and Mahabharata. Many kings are called Ashwapati. And interestingly, these kings are found in northwest India. So around regions which we now call Pakistan, Sindh, Afghanistan, so Gandhara region, Madra region, Kaikaya region is associated with horses. Kaikai is associated with chariots. Again, northwest, because that is where the horses were coming from. Gajapati is the kings of Odisha were called Gajapati. They always came from the eastern side. India would export elephants and import horses. So horses were very important in India, but they were imported. You don't find this in the Indus Valley civilization. You find it after that. And they're everywhere. You go to South India and you have, like in Maharashtra, this Khandoba who rides a horse. Beautiful images of Khandoba are found in art. Let me find the picture of Khandoba. Look at this image of Khandoba on a horse, white horse, riding, killing with his wife Bhalsa Devi. Such images are found not just in Maharashtra, they are found in Rajasthan. You find Pabuji riding a horse, you find Raja Rasool riding a horse, you have Guga Peer riding a horse. They're riding a horse, holding a sword in the hand, Ramdev Peer riding a horse, and the horse is usually a goddess. So, like Chetak, very famous Chetak of Prithviraj Chauhan. So, you have this, and the horse is not normal. The horse is considered to be a goddess. And she takes, there is also a blue colored horse who flies through the skies and through the desert. This idea is very popular. And those who have read anything on Islamic mythology would have heard about the Prophet Muhammad making all the way to the heavens on a flying horse or horse-like creature called Buraq. So this idea of a horse which could fly across the sky is a very big idea in Rajasthan, in the folk traditions, in the Veera cult. Similar ideas you find in Tamil Nadu. In Tamil Nadu, you big gigantic terracotta horses being given to Ayanar and to the local folk gods, the many gods over there, local gods, they would give terracotta images. And there is an image of Muttal Ravutan. Ravutan is a cavalryman who is the guardian of Draupadi's shrines, and he's a Muslim guy who is guarding Draupadi's shrine, and he rides a horse. So clearly, when the Turks were coming to India, the Persians, the Afghans, the Central Asians, the Mughals were coming to India, they came on horseback. And that image of the man coming on a horseback becomes part of literature. It becomes part of poetry. So you find across India, if you go to Jagannath Puri temple, there's a very famous image of a black man riding a white horse and a white man riding a black horse. And it is related to the story of Purushottam Dev and Padmavati. And they said these are images of Jagannath and Balaram riding on horses to motivate the king Purushottam Dev who had to war against the king of Kanchi. So you have in Odisha, in Bengal, in Rajasthan, in Gujarat, gods who ride horses. You suddenly these Loka Devatas who are riding horses, but these stories are 500 years old, 800 years old. Before that, you suddenly see the use of horse. Cavalry is emerging from Alex's time. Cavalry becomes important, and people have forgotten the chariot, which is there in Buddha's time, and before that in Ram and Krishna's time. So, and all after 1500 BCE. So, from 1500 BCE, the horse appears in the Indian subcontinent, the Aryan horse. He appears, as I said in the story of Parshurama, it appears in his chariots in the story of Ram. It appears in chariots in the story of Krishna. But the chariots slowly disappear from the Buddha's story. They start appearing. Now you have cavalrymen, men riding horses in the story of Kalki Avatar, in the story of Revanta, Jayanta, in the story of Pabuji, Guga Peer, Ramdev Peer, Khandoba, Ayanar. You have still this magical image of the horse-headed god, Hayagriva, far in the south, in the Tamil regions. You have the story remembering those old Vedic gods like Dadichi, the Rishi Dadichi. So horse becomes part of our collective mind. And we believe horse has always existed in India. Ye Sanatan hai, from time immemorial horses were there in India. But the reality is, horses were not native to India. The wild horse existed in India maybe 10,000 years ago, but it became extinct at that time. was extinct over 10,000 years ago, an old wild horse, maybe. We're not 100% sure of that. What we do know for sure is 3,500 years ago, the newly domesticated horse, which had become very popular and in Egypt, in Mesopotamia, in China, and in India, came into India with the Ashwapatis. And the Ashwapatis made it part of our culture. And today it's there everywhere. Ghodon ke bina, we can't imagine that horse is not part of Indian thought. Vedic thought it is there, but Harappan thought it is not there. It is there in Vedic thought, there in Upanishadic thought, it is there in the Itihasas, it is there in the Puranas, it's there in the temples, it is there in the Desi Parampara, Margi Parampara. Everywhere the horses are there, but not in Harappa. It's not there in the oldest prehistoric works. It is there in much later prehistoric artwork. And that I think is interesting. When you locate mythology in history, great new ideas emerge. And that is what I wanted to share Kala Ghoda Festival, because it is the Kala Ghoda Festival, the Black Horse Festival. And I'm remembering the black horses and the white horses, the Shweta Ashwa and the Krishna Ashwa. And I'm remembering this I saw as a child in Jagannath Puri of Krishna riding the white horse and Balaram riding the black horse, the Kala Ghoda, and going towards Kanchi. So the next time you see the horse, do remember the mythologies and also remember the history and the geography. The fact that they were first domesticated in southern Russia and they made their journeys through the Oxus civilization, that is Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, gradually via Sindh area, entered India 1500 years ago. The 1500 BC, May 3500 years ago. That's the story of the Aryan horse. I hope you enjoyed this session. If you like it, do consider buying books which have images of horses, like the Hindu Trinity. And if you don't, it's okay. But it's always good to support writers. So thank you so much. This was my talk on the Aryan horse. If you have questions, we have questions. So I request, I think Indira, that was my talk. So, if you can help me moderate the rest of the session where we can answer question and answers, it will be wonderful.
Yes, yes, here I'm back. I shall help you moderate. But before I allow other people's questions, I first want to thank you because I think the fantastic thing you did was give us a history of the horse, connect it into the context of our myths and our epics, but also tie in this massive geography, this huge area across plains and mountains from the steppes over the Himalayas into the subcontinent, and make it clear that we're all part of this kind of extended revolving culture. Very exciting. It was really great. Thank you so much. And you did it all in the in so that we could grasp it. I mean, that's really something. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I know we have a lot of questions, and some of them are actually asking. Essentially, apart from everyone saying it's amazing and fantastic and excited by listening to you, they're also asking why. Why is it that the chariot and the horse, what is that relationship between chariot and the horse? Why is it that the horse came later? And so that some of those
Yeah.
questions.
So,
Yeah.
We had wagons before. We know that there were wagons. If you go to Indus Valley civilization, you have these lovely wagons with wheels and detachable wheels and pulled by bullocks. Right. I know in Bagpat, many people have found in Bagpat area, the recent excavation found a wagon, and everybody says it's a chariot. It's a chariot. It's not a chariot. It's a wagon. And these same, I think my voice is echoing. The recent excavation found a wagon. Indira, I think, and everybody said it's a chariot. It's not a chariot. It's a wagon.
Yes.
And these same, yeah. I think.
Yes.
How do we control that? Anyway.
So I think because I'm both on live. Yes. I'm an insider. Maybe
There's
you
a
can just
lag,
mute
so my
your
voice.
Yes.
How do we control that? Anyway.
So I think because I'm both on live. Okay. Sorry, technology. Okay.
No, it happens.
Yes.
So what we'll So what happens is these wagons were first pulled by bullocks. We know that because in the Oxus civilization we have similar wagons which were pulled by bullocks. Horses in the early stages were very small and they could not be ridden by humans. Maybe small humans could ride them because in the Rig Veda you definitely have cavalry reference, very clear verse
Mhm.
of cavalry, but maybe they couldn't be used for riding fast. Maybe they were used very slowly. The way we imagine
Mhm.
horses today, that's not the way they were used.
Mhm.
But they could be used to pull the chariots, and they were not really
Mhm.
used as Ghudasavar, which we imagine this cavalry is running. The Lord of the Ring pictures that we see in the Game of Thrones, where they are running. That comes much
Yes.
later. That emerged. That kind of horse, powerful, majestic horse, which emerges, I think, emerged much later, almost 1,000 years later, around the time of
Mhm.
Alexander, which is what Alexander
Mhm.
comes that Alexander comes with this horses riding. That's, I think, the
Mhm.
world's first major invention of these horses. I think that was one of his technological advantages over the Persians who were still using the chariot. One of the, I mean, I don't know
Mhm.
exactly, the military historians will be better equipped to explain this.
Yes.
But this, we know that the early horses, see, first they were wild horses, then they were captured and they were
Mhm.
used for meat. They were like used, like we
Right.
used goats and sheep. They were used only for meat. They were not used for as a beast of burden. That is the first
Yes.
domestication. The second domestication is when
Yes.
they were used as a beast of burden, but used as chariots.
Mhm.
And then the third level
Mhm.
is when they became for horse riding. And then what we see the
Yes.
horse today. This is a much later. And then, of course, in that period, the big invention was the stirrup. The stirrup and the reins
Mhm.
which we have emerged much later. The
Yes.
early, maybe we don't know whether Alexander used stirrups, so it comes later. I mean, the historians would
Yes.
know it better. There is the stirrup is a
Mhm.
great invention which happened, and the Mongols, of course, took horse riding to another level. The Parthians and the Central, they could ride horses and shoot arrows while they were riding horses, which was an amazing feat that made them formidable
Mhm.
soldiers. But that happens much
Yes.
later. And the horse loses
Yes.
its importance completely after the First World War because now you have bikes. The moment you had bikes and motorbikes,
Yes.
horse lost its
Yes.
value. It lost its. Um, it's interesting, by the way, if you read the Chinese epic Journey to the West, where Xuanzang is coming to India, he comes on a horse, a dragon horse. It's interesting. He's coming from China to India on a horse, but that horse had come to China via Central Asia, via Mongolia around 1500
Mm.
BCE. So Chinese, a
Mm.
horse is not native to China. It comes via Mongolia
Yes.
much later. Not the early Chinese didn't have
Mhm.
horses.
Mm.
Sorry, this is a
Fascinating.
very
Thank you for
exciting
that
topic.
answer. Yes, yes, really it is. And so much, both sort of the confluence of both human invention and the exciting aspect of the human endeavor, and then of course all the legends. I mean, the fact of the mythical horse is very exciting, actually. Yeah, because then I suppose people realize. That there's something magical about flying across large tracts of land, and so that makes them into these mythical creatures.
Yeah.
Somebody is asking, what is the significance of the white and the black colored horses, or is there one?
That's a very good point. In Indian mythology, black and white plays an important role, not in the racist sense that is used now in America, and also not in the racist sense of
Mhm,
fair and lovely, which Indians also have. Let's not, we are
mhm,
colorist.
mhm,
You know, so there is a very famous story that when Kala Ghoda Festival went to ask, I don't know it's true or urban legend, when they went to ask for sponsorship, somebody said, Kala Ghoda ko Gora Ghoda kyun nahi banate ho? Kala Ghoda to Ashubh hai. I don't know if it's urban legend or what, but I heard it from someone, and I was like laughing about it. And but
mhm,
the fact is, white and black is always used in India to show complementary ideas. So Ganga is white in color, Yamuna is black in color, Shiva is white in color, Krishna is black in color. So Sham Rang ya Krishna or Dhaval. Dhaval is white. So
mhm,
this is constant.
mhm,
This is a constant play of colors that is
mhm,
constantly used in Indian mythology. So
mhm,
Kali is black and Gauri is white. Shiva is
mhm,
white and Krishna is black, or Vishnu is black. Ganga is white,
mhm,
Yamuna is black. constantly. So the black horse and the white
Mm.
horse complement the white god. So there's constant use of this. It's like the yin and yang being used. Black and white is
Yes.
used. I think it's a yin yang concept it's coming across.
Hmm. Yes. Oh, what a nice answer. Um, Let me check. There's a question about Genghis Khan and the Mongols, and which you referred to already a little bit about the Mongolians,
Yes.
harnessing of the horse. Yes.
So the Mongols changed world history dramatically. We don't know much about them because we always visualize them as barbarians coming from Central Asia, riding across from Mongolia through Central Asia in the 13th century. So this is a very important period. It's about 100 years after Islam enters India, after the Ghazni and the Ghoris come into India. We don't realize what this. They never entered India. Mongols were blocked by the Khiljis. The Khiljis were able to put them away because these people came like a massive thunderstorm, and they
Mm.
completely destroyed things right up to the Roman Empire. They came massively destroying, but the Islamic, the old Abbasid Empire collapsed. Baghdad was wiped out. The great city of Baghdad was destroyed forever. It was a massive. It was like the tornado which happened, and it changed geopolitics for a lot. So we know that from this dynasty, they were. By the way, the interesting thing is they loved horses. They also liked brocades. तो जो बनारसी साड़ी होती थी, they loved brocades. The brocade, for some reason, the Mongol warriors would go on these tents, but they loved chunky things, these bright things. So they took weavers, they took and they would transplant people, and they took technology to different parts of the world, and they loved this. And Ghudsavari became a big thing, and from them come Timur lane, from whom comes the Mughal dynasty. Incidentally, I was just reading about Babur, and Babur is Mughal from his mother's side and Timurid from his father's side, and he didn't like his Mughal ancestors. He looked down upon them. He wanted to call himself Timurid dynasty. He hated the word Mughal, but his history remembers him as Mughal. And again, horse plays a very important role, is because it is that horse and that gave them, the Mughals, the great strength. If you look at the history, the horse rider is becomes a very powerful character. And the Mughals and Kublai Khan in China also brings the horse, and they were able to shoot, as I said, they were able to shoot arrows. The Parthians had it. They could sit on the horse and shoot arrows, which is something that was not done before. Previously, they could use spear, they could use sword, they could use axes, but they couldn't use bow and arrow. And I think bow and arrow on a riding horse is a very formidable feat. They could literally, women
Yeah.
used to ride horses. The Mongol women used to ride horses and breastfeed, and they used to deliver babies while they were riding horses. They were that powerful.
Oh,
So it is a
yes.
different civilization.
Yes. Yes. What shows you that humankind can adapt to anything, really. I mean, right now we worry so much about where the baby's going to be born, but you can just be riding a horse. um, we have a couple of lot more questions, but I think I'll sort of run to the Vikings. Somebody asked about the Vikings and their relationship with the horses, and then we come back to the a question which is who is Ucheshravas, and so
Ucheshravas. Okay.
yes,
Okay.
and then
So let's
there
first
is
come
a
to
question about
Viking.
Parashurama and Jamadagni, but I think you already addressed that, so we can, yeah, yeah.
So Vikings, obviously the horse traveled to North Slavic lands, to Scandinavian lands, and they had this image of Odin, the god, the king of the gods, Odin, who had a horse which had 8 legs. So all gods have to have supernatural things. Like when you talk about Indra, they will say Indra has a elephant, but his elephant is unusual. His elephant had 6 trunks, 7 trunks, and 6 tusks. In the same way, they would talk
Mm,
about Odin as having a
mm,
horse which was pulled by 8 legs. 8 legs, it had 8 legs. So it's a very interesting concept that you have in the Norse tradition of a horse is being ridden by this the god, the king of the gods, having this horse which has 8 legs. So I think that's a very interesting idea. I think the
Mhm.
next question was related to one was about horse.
Ucheshravas.
Uche. So when the ocean of milk is churned, now remember these stories come, early form of it comes in the Mahabharata. So it's about 2000,
Mhm.
2200 years old, the story. And we talk about the ocean of milk being churned and wonderful things coming out of it. One of the things that comes out of
Mhm.
it is the flying horse, which is
Mhm.
Uchchaishrava. And again, in the
Mhm.
Cheshrava, this black and white thing plays a very important role because we are told that Kashyap's two wives, Vanita or Vinata and Kadru, have a bet whether Uchchaishrava's
Mhm.
tail is white or black. And
Mm.
and in order to win the bet, Kadru plays a trick. She tells her children, the snakes, to cling to the tail of Uchchaishrava. So from far away, the horse looks as if it has black tail when it is actually serpents clinging to it. And that's how she cheats and she wins the bet and she enslaves the mother of the birds, Vinata. And her son, Garuda, takes his revenge by killing the snakes. So there is this
Mm.
complex story of betting. Betting is a vice that
Yes.
is we see also in the Mahabharata happening. So Nala
Yes.
Damayanti, the story of betting. So this
Yes.
Uchchaishrava plays a very important role. People often the flying horse of Hindus, that is Uchchaishrava, and the flying horse of the Greeks is Pegasus. But that
Mm.
Pegasus is always shown with wings, while Uchchaishrava is never
Mhm.
shown with wings. But
Mm.
there are some later influence, perhaps influenced by European artists, where Uchchaishrava is shown as having wings, which is
Mm.
interesting.
Yes, we often associate those winged horses also with all of these Central Asian civilizations, right? Babylonian and so on and so
Yes.
forth, somehow.
Mostly
Yeah,
they were
yeah.
winged bulls more than winged
Ah,
horses. So the Zoroastrian, if you
ah,
go to the Agyaris, you will find the Goda
yes.
images. These are bulls, male bulls with wings, and
Mm,
these men have these massive beards. Not the
mhm,
horse as much as the bull. Remember, the
mm,
bull is a massive
mm,
creature, and it's a
yes.
symbol of great strength and virility. The horse, of course, is also a
Mm,
symbol of strength and virility. But the
mhm,
flying, what you're referring to, the wings, is a very Persian, Mesopotamian, and Sumerian artwork. But it's mostly the
yes.
bull more than the horse.
Horse. Okay. Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that. And then we return back to, well, we have two other questions, and then maybe we'll slowly wind down. One of them is why are horses associated? Seems appropriate to ask this after your last comment. Why are horses associated with the feminine aspect? And then the one more question, which was earlier on, which is returns to the idea of history, not so much of the horse, which is whether the Mahabharata or the Ramayana came first. And so that comes back to the essentials. Yeah.
So the horse is both masculine and feminine. In the folk legends of Pabuji, everything, the male gods, the heroes, the वीर जो होते हैं, उनकी घोड़ी होती है, घोड़ा नहीं होता है. And the घोड़ी is invariably the mother goddess, either their own mother themselves or an aunt or a goddess who blesses them and takes the form of a mare and rides with them. Now it's very interesting because vahanas are typically male, but the Ghodi, the Raja Ghode ki, and one of the reasons why even during weddings, the man comes riding a female horse. And the female horse was considered auspicious. For some reason, the female horse is considered auspicious. Also, remember that the male horse, while a massive, beautiful stallion was considered a very powerful thing, the female horse perhaps was useful because it could produce more babies. But we don't know that. I mean, I haven't thought deeply about it. But the female horse was important. The first female horse we hear about is Saranya. The Surya Bhagwan once was so bright that he annoyed his wife Saranya, who ran away from him in the form of a female horse. And to appease her, he takes the form of a male horse. Surya takes the form of a male horse, and they sort of copulate and they produce the Ashwin twins. So the story of the first female horse is from Saranya, who is annoyed with her husband. The fact that she takes a female horse form is interesting. Also, female horse is also one more interesting thing about a female horse is there's something concept known as Vadavagini. the submarine mare. So under the sea, it is said there is a wild female horse which is burning with fire. It contains. They say that when the Kshatriyas and the Brahmins were having a fight, one of the Brahmins produced a child, Aurava, and Aurava was full of anger, and he wanted to kill the Kshatriyas with that his anger. And his father said, "Anger doesn't solve anything. So so get rid of your anger." He didn't know what to do with his anger, so he turned this anger into a horse or a female horse, a mare, which and told the female horse, "Go hide under the sea, and when pralaya comes, you shall rise from that uh, from the sea, and you will become the steed of Kalki." So the Kalki's horse is really a mare in some traditions, not a horse. Although in some traditions, a horse called Devdutt, by the way, my name. So the Kalki's horse is called Devdutt in some. I mean, there are many versions of it. And the female horse
Yeah.
who and said that the mist comes and the clouds come from the sea because of this female horse. So the female horse is a very interesting concept. I've unfortunately not done much. You have to understand a little bit more about why were female horses considered to be auspicious. You have to understand a little bit about the horse breeding patterns to understand that better. I mean, if I talk to maybe a horse trainer and you should talk to them, they will be able to explain why the difference between the temperament of a male horse and a female. And I think that would give us a clue why these great heroes always had a ghodi, never a ghoda.
And then, so actually, there is an interesting question, which is, do we have any gender fluid horses in mythology? Are there queer
I
horses
don't
in
know.
mythology?
I haven't heard of them, but when I find out, I'll definitely tell you.
Good. Yes.
And
So
Ramayana
we're
Mahabharata
coming to
history question that will never be solved, so let's not answer that
yeah.
question. So.
Yes, yes, yes. I think we're coming to the close of the session now. It really was marvelous, Devdutt. As always, you've taken us on this journey with you. We've traveled with the horse, flown across the steppes into the subcontinent, but also learned so much about the multiplicity of all of these stories and all the different origins there are and all the complexities of interpretation and really the compelling aspect of the horse in Indian mythology. So thank you so very much. It was just a pleasure to have you as always. Great honor for the Kala Ghoda Festival. The white horse, the black horse, we all bow our heads. and
Thank
I'm
you. Thank
grateful
you.
to LIC for supporting this, which is always wonderful. And so thank you very much. Devdutt Pattanaik, a
Thank you.
round of
Bye bye.
applause. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Life is about to change, eh? No more 8 घंटे की नींद, no more late night movies, no more parties with friends.
बिल्कुल सही कहा तुमने। इसके फ्यूचर के लिए अब नो मोर हॉलीडेज, नो मोर शॉपिंग और नो मोर फिजूल का खर्च।
लेकिन अगर इसका फ्यूचर ऑलरेडी सिक्योर्ड हो तो?
रियली?
डैडी बने हो, देवदास नहीं। जीना छोड़ दूंगा, हॉलीडेज छोड़ दूंगा।
स्मार्ट लोगों की क्लियर है प्रायोरिटी, बाकी सब बाद में। क्यूट वाले मेहमान से पहले LIC।